Time now for a look through the press with Diptyque Laurent. Dipty, you're starting with that meeting between US Vice President J.D. Vance and the foreign ministers of Denmark and Greenland.
Yeah, that's right. The Denmark and Greenland ministers, Danish and Greenlandic ministers, flew to Washington for urgent talks over Donald Trump's growing threats to acquire Greenland. Extrabladet, this is a Danish paper headlining on this on the front page today with a rather diplomatic headline. It says that meeting was really summed up by continued disagreements between Washington and Copenhagen. But it says nonetheless that smoke and steam is wafting over Denmark. The paper saying in a literal reference to the Danish minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen lighting up a cigarette after that meeting on Wednesday. Now for another Danish paper here, they're also headlining on this and says they really sum up that meeting by saying that disaster has been averted for now, at least. Let's take a look at the Greenlandic press. This is from Sermitsiaq, whose editorial team were following that meeting very closely in their analysis today. They say that the US tried to play Denmark and Greenland off against each other, but didn't succeed. They note that one of the positives is that came out of that meeting is that dialogue is continuing, but one of the negatives, or the major negative, is that everyone seems to be sticking to their arguments for the moment.
All right, so how have the US papers responded?
Well, we can show you how the White House responded on social media, posting this cartoon here titled "Which Way, Greenland Man?" And you see that the directions are pointing either to the South Lawn, that's the US, or the Great Wall, that's China, or Red Square, that's Russia. So this cartoon has sparked some reaction itself in the press, a lot of criticism from The Guardian today, who objects notably to this depiction, this rather reductive depiction of Greenland, of indigenous people in general. It also looks at this expression of Greenlandic man, which it finds extremely offensive, and its two-dimensional representation. That's according to the co-founder of the World Project Against Hate and Extremism, who is actually interviewed in this article here from The Guardian. She condemns the flagrant example of a nod to the racist literature of the far right and its concept of the Western man. Now, you kind of see this continuing in the Wall Street Journal today, this conservative journal here. Look at this headline here. Welcome to Greenland, an economy reliant on subsidies and shrimp. A rather reductive way of describing Greenland. The Business Daily warning that if Trump were to acquire Greenland, he would find himself in charge of a, quote, slow-growing economy, heavily reliant on more than 1 billion euros of government subsidies and large sales of shrimp. In its article, the paper says Greenlandic officials themselves have privately agreed that anyone running this island would be likely facing down a money pit rather than a gold mine. And in the New York Times today, it looks at exactly how Greenland is also really at the very important for a world that's rapidly changing, at least a world climate that's rapidly changing. Greenland is really on the front lines of the negative effects of global warming. 80% of Greenland is covered in ice, and as the temperatures get hotter, that ice is melting rapidly, which in decades to come will also release a wealth of untapped minerals under the soil that will be open for grabs. Ironically, the New York Times says famously climate skeptic Donald Trump's push for Greenland is in a way an admission that climate change is real.
All right, finally from you then. It's one of India's most iconic fashion statements, and it could be disappearing.
Yeah, that's right. The bandghala is a ubiquitous Indian garment. If you don't know what it is, you've probably seen it nonetheless. It's worn by India's railways staff. It's a button-up jacket with a stand-up collar, and it has evolved from centuries of formal attire in royal India. Now, its origins actually lay with the Mughals and the Rajasthani kingdoms. The jacket was at the center of a debate in India this week after the Indian Railways minister said that it is a relic of British colonialism, and the government has now moved to ban the jacket as part of the formal uniform of the Indian railway staff. The decision is quite critiqued by the Indian Express, this local paper here. In this article here, they sort of go through the history of the bandghala and why it's so important to India's history, past and present. And the editors of the paper today here saying that actually the bandghala is inherently Indian. It became an inspiration for the West, but it has always been a crucial part of the Indian identity. It may have emerged during colonialism, the editor says, but so did the Indian railways as well.
All right, Deeptika Laurent, thank you very much for that look through the papers.